I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Linda McFadden. I'll chair this hearing this morning. Joining me on the panel are Laurie Davidson in the committee room and Lynn Nesbitt on Zoom. Our assessor this morning is Matthew Barokas. Our administrative personnel is Jaswinder Kumar. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat with each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decision. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We'll be hearing items 1 through 6, I believe, on our docket today.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Mr. Kumar, will you please affirm the assessor's and the applicant's testimony?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Matthew Barokas.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Cates, please state your full name.
Sarah Cates.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the first item on our agenda is 437 Hamilton. I don't believe there's any preliminary issues that need to be dealt with. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Assessor, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. File number 22-1529, roll number 0721806320, 437 Hamilton, assessed value $8,277,000. 4 buildings, 2 stories, built in 1975. We don't have an effective year built on it, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. 72 suites, 72 outdoor parking spots. Construction class D, wood or steel framed exterior walls. Page 2, no recent sales history, and we've got the recent mailers, so we have data on them. Income value summary is found on page 3. See, it's a split of 16 bachelor, 34 1 bed, 22 2 bed. For the 72 total units, modeled rent is $1,051, and with the model parameters for expenses and capitalization rate, come to an estimated market value of $8,277,000 or $114,958 per unit. Rent comparables are found on page 4. You can see that properties in the general area of the same age, which do have bachelor suites, not as many as the subject property granted. The average monthly rent is in and around what the model's putting out. So it looks like our rent is supported by comparables. Capitalization rate evidence on page 5. Now you've seen this already. Won't go into too much depth, but these are just 6 sales that I was able to find using 3 years of income and expenses leading up to the date of the sale. I was able to stabilize net operating income based on historical data and using the sale price to come up with capitalization rates. You can see that the capitalization rates, most of the ranges from 4.7 to 5.7. On the next page, page 6, 5th row down, you can see the 20th and 80th percentile here, City of Winnipeg, ranges from 4.8 to 5.6. So that's in parallel with what my findings were based on stabilizing the income and expenses of actual sales. So that's a good thing. It supports the model, the actual data. It supports what the model's putting out, which is what you want. Municipal excerpts are on page 7. That's just a bolt on. And those sales on page 5, those are the sales that appear in all our briefs today. So they're not meant to be property specific. They're just meant to substantiate the majority of the modeled rates as shown on page 6. So on page 8, there's just some information in regards to property. It's located in St. James, consists of 4 buildings, private entrances, large balconies that surround a beautiful seasonal saltwater pool and a garden-like setting off Portage, close to Union City Mall. It's in the Crestview area, north of Portage, getting towards the west perimeter. It's a nice neighborhood, suburban. And there's a list of features. I'm not going to read them off to you because you guys can go through those. And then there's some pictures here on page 9. So you can see it's a kind of like a garden style apartment in a nice park-like setting. I mean, honestly, it's like a pretty nice place to live. You can see that they do have a pool in the middle. The landscaping looks well maintained. And on to page 10. So what I was getting at when I was saying that so 1975 when I'm an effective age, however that might need to be reviewed, it's because you can see that when you're looking at the pictures beginning on page 10, they've been renovating their units by the looks of it. It's not 1975. It brought them up to modern spec. By the looks of it, backsplashes, new cabinetry, countertop. And so, I mean, it's obvious it's not 1975, so I think it deserves an effective age. However, the value under appeal doesn't, account for these renovations, so to speak. So it's more clearly illustrated on page 14. You can see the summary of the expenses. And unfortunately, this is one of those really detailed, hard to read income and expense statements. But if I can direct your attention, so if you look at the items on the left side of your screen or paper, 3rd row from the bottom, major repair and replacement. If you go over to 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th column, year-to-date actual, it says they've spent $259,000 on major repair and replacement, which is a lot more than the next row up where they just have maintenance at $158,000. You can see in the column next to it, year-to-date budget, they actually budgeted to spend, $250,000 doing major repairs and replacement on it. And then if you look at 2 columns over, year-to-date last year, they spent $200,000 the year before. So they're fixing the units up, I would suspect, as the tenants move out, or as they become available, fix them up, and then they re-rent them at higher rates. That's typically what's done. I can't say for sure because I haven't talked to the owner, but I know they're not going to renovate them with people inside them while they're still collecting money. So I think it deserves an effective age on it. Off the top of my head, I can't give one. I'd have to do more research, but they spent a lot of money, and then it looks like they've been continuing to spend a lot of money. I don't know what percentage of the units are renovated, unfortunately, but it does seem like we're not totally capturing what's going on. Just to give you a point of reference, with our assessment, the market value per suite is $114,958. If this place was to sell, if these units were to sell as condos, I'm pretty sure they'd sell for a lot more than that. So I don't think, just looking at that metric, that we're not overstating the assessment. So just wrapping it up, 1975, we don't have an effective year, but clearly they deserve one. That's my evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brokus. Do you have any questions, Ms. Gates?
Yes, thank you. So you mentioned that the property will be a garden style apartment. For your rent comps on page 4, are you aware if any of those are also garden style apartments?
I don't think so.
Okay. And would you agree that comps 3 and 4 have a higher proportion of larger units as compared with the subject?
That's correct, yes.
And would you agree larger suites would command higher rents?
Yes, they would.
Okay. And if we go to your cap rate table on page 6, in looking at your range, can you provide any information on the sales being used to achieve that range, such as how many were included in what areas, etc.?
On page 6?
On page 6, yeah.
Oh, no. Unfortunately, these are model drive. This is a model drive range. It is, if you go back to page 5, in parallel with my findings. So that's what we want to see. So we're confident with their model rates.
Okay. And the broker cap rates that you have listed, those are further support for the assessment department cap rates. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty, if you look at, what's the next column over? Low to high Colliers, 5 to 6. TBRE, 5.5, 5 to 6, depending on the story height. So we're in the same range together.
Okay. So given those ranges, would you agree that the subject property at a 5.15 would be on the low end of those ranges?
Of those ranges, yes. But I mean, we do a lot of income and expense review. We see the sales mailers that we get from the purchasers, and a lot of the time they declare below 5%, 5.5%. I'm actually very surprised. We do get more information than the brokers do, because we get all the income and expenses. They kind of just get the properties they represent and what they have access to, whereas we get it all. So I'm more confident in our determination than theirs.
Okay. And then, so you included the income statement on pages 14 and 15. Mm-hmm. Would you agree in looking at that the property tends to run high expenses?
Yes, it's kind of tricky when they are renovating, because then you're left basically to make determinations based on their discretion of where they want to allot expenses. Now they have 2 categories. They have a major repair and replacement and a maintenance category, so to speak. I mean, there could be some unintentional reporting crossover, but I see what you're saying. Like with a garden style apartment that's got a pool, it's got kind of some landscaping involved. Repairs and maintenance are going to run a bit higher than a typical apartment. Okay.
And had you considered using the actual expenses given the type of property it is in your valuation?
No, because the difficulty is with this one is that it looks like they're renovating quite a bit every year. We don't have an effective age, and we're not sure that they're done renovating. So if they're not done, then our physical reference date of April 1st, 2000, or rather January 1st, 2023, the reported potential income on this end of year 2020 isn't going to reflect the income producing potential of a building that's been fixed up more. So given that we haven't adjusted the effective age, I just left it at model because I think this one's kind of like a moving target.
Okay. And in terms of the pictures you've included, you would agree those are marketing photos and likely the best units in the property, correct?
I mean, I don't know, I don't think they're done all the units, but these are the ones that are being renovated. These are marketing photos, so that is correct.
Okay. And then final question, just turning to your cap rate evidence on page 5. Mm-hmm. Have you provided the workups as part of your direct evidence?
Not part of my direct evidence, but anything you want to know, I could let you know because I did the workups and I have them on my computer. And some are in rebuttal. If we go there, hopefully we don't have to go too deep into that today.
Okay, thank you. That would conclude my questions on this property.
Thank you. Ms. Nesbitt, do you have questions?
Yeah, I was also looking at your page 5, and I appreciate that these are just samples, so I understand that. But are any of these garden apartments?
No, they are not.
Okay. And, you can't help but look at them and try to find the subject property within here to see if there's sort of a reflection. So in terms of number of suites, the McPhillips property seems to be the closest, but it was built in 2015 and it does have one of the lower cap rates.
Right.
Do you see any of, which one would best reflect the type of property that we're dealing with today? I understand that you're just showing them to show a range of cap rates. I get that. But you can't help but look and try to find the subject somewhere in there, right?
Yeah, of course. And so I guess when it comes to garden style apartments, I think it's important, because I know I've had this discussion a lot, that yes, their repair and maintenance will run a bit higher. It's just a fact. They've got more roof, they got more exterior. That's just a reality. However, that would be captured in their actual expenses. So if you're looking at their expenses, and if you're going to take those into consideration, then that into consideration there in that bucket, you can't then go and also adjust the cap rate, because that would be double adjusting for the same issue. So if you're saying there's risk or whatever, additional expenses, well, okay, we're accounting for that. Now we can't just go and adjust the cap rate further. Okay. To your question, year built, the best I could tell you this is, okay, so 32 Arden, built in 69. Our subject is built in 1975. Now, it's not a garden style apartment, but it has been renovated. Arden's a nice area in St. Patel. This is a nice area in St. James, and it calculated a 5.02 cap, and we're in that range. So it's not exact by any means, but I would lean towards that one if I'm looking for an example from this table.
Okay, and just one short question on your expense ratio. The model uses 51.52%. In terms of an expense ratio, is that high, low? Is that reflective of what you might see in a garden apartment?
It depends on how many of the units have been renovated, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we don't have that ratio. I'm going to ask that question. I don't know if Farah knows. Maybe she doesn't. But for a building of this age, that would be average. For a building of this age that's been renovated, that would be high. For a garden style apartment of it being renovated, probably makes sense, depending on how many are renovated those, because we don't know that answer, unfortunately.
Exactly. You did indicate it was a moving target.
Yeah.
So when was the last time this property was inspected?
Let me pull the notes up here quickly for us, and then I'll be able to tell you. Off the top of my head, I don't know. We're 37. Loading. So if we don't have an effective age on it, it would be good to know exactly how many have been renovated in order to try and see if an effective age was warranted. Like if it's 2 units, then maybe we'll hold off. If it's like 50%, then yeah. So in regards to your question for inspection, I don't have any notes, unfortunately, of anyone being there recently. So I think it would do us some good to kind of get some more data on this one.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. No further questions, Madam Chair.
Davidson.
Just one really quick question. You're talking about the renovations of the suites, basically. They're updating them. What about the exterior, given like it's a garden style apartment, like, with the wood facing, et cetera? Do you know if there's renos on the exterior as well?
So I'm scrolling down to page 15 and 16 that shows kind of what they're spending. Actually, so on page 15, if you look at the major repairs and replacement breakdown,
Yes.
Exterior major repairs, 127,591 on the most recent year. They budgeted 80,000. They did more. They did 124,759 the year before. So it looks like they are keeping up with the capital exterior repair and replacement.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all my questions.
Ms. Barocas, you're talking about the renovations, but do you have any permits at all?
Let me pull this up. I don't believe I do. I believe this is one of these instances where they just fix them up as people move out individually. They don't vacate and drop their income to nothing and do them wholesale. But in terms of, I have some alter exterior permits, but I don't have anything interior related. So in 2021 here, July 20, placement of second floor balconies on a few units, shared stair. So they've been doing some exterior stuff, but unfortunately no dollar value I can assign to the interior renovations.
Given that this building is close to 50 years old, it's not surprising that they would be replacing wooden balconies.
No, yeah, I agree.
They look like they're wooden ones. So wouldn't the lack of permits on the interior suggest to you that these renovations that they're doing are largely cosmetic, that they are not dealing with major upgrades of the electrical system or of the plumbing system, that kind of thing?
Well,
Which are the things that would really change the effective age, right?
well, if you're going to rip out the cabinets from 75 and the old flooring and redo the bathrooms, and those rents are gonna get bumped up, and you're gonna have lower interior repairs and maintenance as a result. I would say it would warrant an effective age. Now, looking at their expenses on page, page 15, it gives a breakdown of what they're doing. They've been doing a heck of a lot of repairs and maintenance on the place, and under what they've said as major repairs and replacements, cabinets, lighting upgrades, interior major repairs, window replacements. So, I mean, they've been keeping on top of it. But I do think it does deserve an effective age. For sure. It's not 1975 anymore in there.
Well, it doesn't look like 1975 anymore. The question is if it really changed the systems, right? That's all my questions. Please go ahead, Ms. Gates.
Thank you. So if you turn to page 2 of the brief, you'll see our requested assessment of $5,950,000, as well as some exterior photos of the property. So if you turn to page 5, we have our property description. So the subject property is located on Hamilton Avenue at its intersections with Redfern Road in the Crestview area of Winnipeg. So the property consists of 4 two-story garden-style apartment blocks. They were built in 1975, and the land size is approximately 2.6 acres. The property has a total of 72 units, and I believe the assessors already touched on the suite mix. And there is an outdoor pool at the property, so you'll see the aerial photograph of the parcel below. And on page 6, we have a Google Map view just to get a better sense of the neighborhood. So on page 9, we have an overview of our income approach. So we are contesting the assessor's cap rate of 5.15%, and we are using a cap rate of 5.75% based on our cap rate study, which I'll briefly go through in a bit. But just as an overview of our cap rate study, we have 2 tables here. The first table showing our base cap rates stratified by effective year built, and these are assuming good quality properties in good locations. And then the second table is all of the factors that we may consider for adjustment on a site-specific basis. So in terms of this particular property, given that there are 4 buildings, they are wood frame garden style, we see these properties having increased risk. So we do put a premium of 0.25% on the cap rate. So that is what we've done here. I would also point out that with this property, it does have a suite mix kind of skewed towards smaller units rather than larger units, which we sometimes see in garden style. So just another point to note out there. So if you turn to page 10, we have our income and expense breakdown. So we've used rents of $768,700 based on the 2020 income of the property. We have applied a market vacancy rate to the subject property of 3.2%. So I note that the actual 3-year average vacancy is lower than the market vacancy we've applied, but it is our practice for these valuation assignments to use a market level vacancy because we're looking at it from the perspective of a prudent purchaser, and they would be conservative and apply a market vacancy rate to account for any type of vacancy and collection loss, and 3.2% would be on the lower end. And then when accounting for the other forms of income that we have here, we have an effective gross income of $801,224. Now with the expenses, what we do is we look at 3 years of expense data where it's available. So you'll see in the remarks column on the right-hand side of the sheet that we note if something is an average or a percentage. If nothing is noted, it could be assumed we're stabilizing based on the most recent year of the expense data. So for certain items like insurance, utilities, those are generally just going up. So we would look at the most recent year, but other items like waste and snow, for example, we would look at an average as there can be fluctuations. So in terms of our expenses, the repair and maintenance is on the higher end, but it's within range of what we see for garden style apartments. So we have stabilized repair and maintenance of $2,841 per suite. Now we have a repair and maintenance breakdown in our brief. So if I could just direct everyone to go to page 34, and I'll just go through the detailed repair and maintenance for this property, and then it will follow through for the remaining properties as well. So on page 34, you'll see we have 5 years of R&M data from 2016 to 2020. So when you look at the bottom of the sheet, you'll see we have the repair and maintenance total. Underneath that, we have repair and maintenance less capital expenditures like extraordinary repairs, roof, hot water tank, and then also less waste and snow as we stabilize the waste and snow separately. And then the bottom line shows an R&M per suite. Now, where we do our stabilizations is next to each line item where we have a detailed breakdown like this. So you'll see on the right-hand side of the sheet, you'll see we have some capped values for certain categories. So for categories of flooring replacement, appliance replacement, painting, and counters, cupboards, and carpentry, we have maximum values already in place. Those are based on discussions with property managers and other knowledgeable people within the real estate market in Winnipeg to know what reasonable values would be for those. And then in terms of other stabilizations, we'll remove outliers. So we've marked those in red. So if anything seems high, that's what we've done for the remainder. So that is how we've come up with our $2,841 per suite for the repair and maintenance. So I think that kind of ties up the discussion on expenses. Now I'll just briefly go through our cap rate study, which is a separate document. So if everyone has that open, then I'll just briefly proceed on this.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So if you turn to page 2, we start by looking at the city's cap rates. So they indicate a range from 3.85 to 7.4% for cap rates, with most kind of falling within the high 4 to mid 5 range. And we also look to the broker reports to see what they indicate for cap rates. And the important takeaways is that they're showing 5% as the absolute low end for low-rise properties. And additionally, they're showing low compression or no compression from last cycle, where the where cap rates have decreased. It's mainly for kind of the best of the best stock. So at the bottom of page 2, we have some discussion on interest rates. So essentially the point here is that the interest rates are only one component of the cap rate, and that the cap rates don't necessarily move one-to-one with the treasury yields. So we have some graphs here as well. These are national graphs, so we don't use them to derive our cap rates, but just to show the relationship between interest rates and cap rates. On page 4, we have some discussion regarding the factors that we consider for adjustments on site-specific basis. So not all of the factors would be relevant to all properties, but just to touch on a couple that would be relevant for today's docket. So in terms of building type and construction, this is where our adjustment for garden style apartments comes in. The idea is that having multiple buildings on the site is not an efficient way to build. And additionally, with wood frame balconies, those tend to deteriorate and not be as high quality of a construction material. And as well with properties like this, we have more systems to maintain, more roof area, more hot water tanks, etc. So given that an owner would have to put more expense into a property like this, it does increase the risk profile of that type of apartment. In terms of some other things, we're seeing building amenities. So tenant preferences have changed and more amenities are considered a positive. So in-suite laundry, balconies, etc. And as well, something that will be coming up later would be in discussion of durability and quality of income with social housing. We do an adjustment there, given that the way social housing is built, lower quality finishes tends to increase the risk profile as well. Generally, social housing will be skewed towards smaller units. And we see here on page 5 in our discussion of suite mix that the preference has changed toward larger units. So having a higher proportion of bachelor and one bedroom can also increase the risk of the property. So on page 6, we have all of our cap rate sales. So the first 3 would be the most pertinent to this cycle. We've also included some older relevant sales just to show where our position has evolved from regarding the cap rates, as well to further bolster some of the age categories. And then page 7 at the top has a breakdown of sale price per suite, also stratified by effective year built, just as another metric to look at. And then the middle to bottom of page 7 is just the tables that are present in all of our briefs. So that would kind of wrap up the cap rate study. The remainder is just the appendix, and I know everyone's heard it before. So I'll just wrap up the presentation. I'll just go back to my main brief on page 10. So on the main brief on page 10, so we have total expenses, which are 57.3% of the effective gross income. This is more of a standard expense ratio that we see for these garden style apartments. As discussed, there's a lot of different elements to maintain here. And then that gives us a net operating income of $342,145. With our 5.75% cap rate, we have an indicated value of $5,950,000 rounded. Now, just to touch on a point that the assessor made in his presentation regarding double counting with using high expenses and a cap rate adjustment, we don't agree with that line of reasoning. The expenses are what they are for the property. These type of properties are more expensive to maintain, and any future owner would have to account for that. And in terms of the cap rate, a cap rate adjustment is also required because you know that you're going to have to invest more money into a property like this going forward. For example, elements like the wood frame balconies, the pool, these are all expensive elements to maintain. So in our view, a cap rate adjustment is also required to account for that. So our value works out to $83,000 per unit roughly. And our appendix starts on page 12, and we have some interior marketing photos as well, and the city valuation and the financial statements that we've looked at. And then in terms of just a comment on the renovations, so I did reach out to the owner to try to gauge how many units were renovated. So what they informed me is that since 2018, 13 units have been renovated. So that accounts for 18% of the property since 2018. There may have also been some renovations prior to 2018, but that information wasn't as readily accessible. But I would assume that there are a bit more than 18%, but I wouldn't assume it's more than half of the whole property. So that would conclude my presentation on this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baroque, I see your question.
Yes. So looking at your page 10, so you're taking the site-specific repairs and maintenance into consideration, correct?
Correct.
And then you're assigning more risk based on the repairs and maintenance being, let's say, twice what a normal apartment would be. Is that correct?
It's not necessarily based on the repairs and maintenance, based on the type of property it is, and knowing that, yeah, there's going to be more invested. So I guess you could put it that, yeah, they would have to expect higher repairs and maintenance, but it's more so accounting for the type of property and all of the elements that have to be maintained.
So if my question is this, and I don't understand, sometimes I have trouble understanding it, is it seems like your Altus takes the site-specific disadvantages into consideration, but when you see vacancy and demand much lower than market, that's boosted to 3%. The site-specific advantage. Why don't you take the site-specific vacancy into account then?
In terms of our view on vacancy, it is our practice to take a market level vacancy, and looking at 3.2% when the city average is 3.8%, 3.2 is not unreasonable to account for vacant units and collection loss over the long term of the property. So in terms of the reason we do the market vacancy instead of the actual for a property like this is because a prudent purchaser couldn't reasonably expect that the vacancy over the long term of the property is going to continue at 1%, 1.7%.
Do you think a prudent seller would allow the competitive advantage this particular property enjoys vacancy wise to be ignored upon negotiation of sale price, or is it just dictated by whatever the purchaser says?
Well, in terms of what we're doing today, we're looking at from kind of an assessment valuation perspective in terms of all the terms that a seller and buyer would work out. I'm not entirely sure.
When the vacancy is higher than the model and market, does Altus not go with a site-specific vacancy then?
When the vacancy is determined to be more of a chronic issue or kind of the beginning of a chronic issue, then we will look to a higher vacancy to account for that. Because if the property is consistently experiencing, let's say 10% vacancy, not due to renovations, then that does have to be accounted for. But in terms of if we just saw a large spike 1 year, we're not necessarily going to just go with that 1 year. If that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. And just in regards to the repairs and maintenance in relation to the cap rate, so I know we don't agree with the risk profile. Do you think that the repair and maintenance level could be high and there could be some misreporting of renovation expenses put into that column?
Misreporting in terms of what the owner is reporting?
But like, you know, when you like replace the 75 cabinets with brand new ones and new flooring and it pushes the rent higher, should that not be included in capital repairs and excluded from a workup on page 10?
Yeah, and I think we also have some disagreement from the assessment department in terms of what is capital and what is repair and maintenance. The way the owner has reported this, they've reported a lot of items under major repair, but when you actually look at what that's accounting for, those would be included in what we would consider to be repair and maintenance. So we would consider replacement of appliances and counters to be part of the general repair and maintenance. Given that this property is from the 70s, it is assumed that they are going to have to replace items to bring them up to standard. So I feel confident in our repair and maintenance analysis because we have gotten rid of outliers. So we're not fully being skewed in any one direction. And we do see repair and maintenance going toward $3,000 a unit for these garden style apartments. So it's not atypical to see this type of level.
Okay, and just question or two more. Have you inspected this property?
I've not inspected this property.
Do you know if the owner is continuing to renovate the property beyond December 2020?
I haven't confirmed with them that they're continuing to renovate, but they were still doing some renovations in 2022. So I think it would be fair to assume that renovations may continue, but I don't have a solid answer on that.
Okay. Then it would be fair to say that if they were continuing to renovate 2 years beyond December 2020, that the income producing potential of the property reported on that 2020 mailer wouldn't adequately or accurately reflect the physical income producing potential January 1st, 2023?
Well, it's hard to say because in terms of the way they've done their renovations in the last 5 years, they've renovated 8 units in 2018, but then in the last 3 years, they were only renovating 1 unit per year. So if they continued just renovating, let's say 1 unit per year, then I don't think the income is going to change that much. So it would depend there.
All right, those are my questions. Thank you.
Ms. Nesbitt, do you have questions?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Ms. Davidson?
Just a quick one. I think you did mention this. On the rent, did you say that it was based on the 2020 actuals?
Yes, it is the 2020 potential market gross rent. So essentially the gross rents less the discounts. That's what we've used.
Right. Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
And that is my question as well. You've taken into account actual rents along with your actual expenses. And the rents are a fair bit lower than what the city's model is pumping out, which I assume would be based largely on the very small units. So like these are primarily 1 bedrooms and bachelor suites, which seems very odd for a garden style apartment. Just a comment.
Yes, I agree.
All right, thank you. Any wish to summarize, either one of you?
Yes, please. I mean, though there are a lot of 1 bedroom and bachelor units, it seems like that fits the neighborhood, given the fact that they've got such low vacancy. That's what's in demand. It's more in demand than properties in the area. So I don't see that as a negative at all. That's my only comment.
Okay, thank you. Carrying on to number 2, 460 Hamilton. I don't believe there are any preliminary issues on this one either.
I believe so.
Please go ahead, Mr. Varakis.
All right, just let me pull it up here. Sorry, just getting set. Okay, so file 22-2582, rule number 07217804800465 Hamilton, assessed value 7,088,1974. No effective age in the property. So we've got 84 suites, 90 outdoor parking spots, construction class C masonry bearing walls. Page 2, no recent sales, mailers have been coming in, no problem. Page 3, income value summary. It's an even split between 1 and 2 bedroom units. Model parameters are found below with a 5 1/4 cap. 7,088,000 or 84,380 units in this one. That's some comparables here on page 4. It's within the range of comparables. These are all, for the most part, 1 and 2 bedroom units. Comparable number 4 is all 2 bedroom units. Really didn't put weight on that one. Page 5 is cap rate stuff. Page 5 and 6. Page 7 is the excerpts. Then we just got what I was able to pull online. There wasn't a heck of a lot, unfortunately. But it does say this, when you look at the page 8, you look below what was the kind of the Google map picture. Property is managed by Towers. The apartment features renovated suites, so not quite sure what that means, but they are advertising. They've been fixing them up. So probably an inspection would do us a bit on this one as well. They're saying they're in a good location, etc. What you expect from an advertisement. On page 9, these are the only pictures able to grab off the computer. I don't know what the inside looks like. They say they're renovated. I don't know if that means they're extensively renovated or they only did a little bit and they're just using that to kind of try to entice people to come in. So we've got the actual income and expense here from the 2020 year. And you can see that they've got extremely low vacancy on this property. So it looks like it is in quite high demand. It doesn't look like there's very much all $800 for the 781. Potential rent, 839 total revenue. And our effective gross income is 815, so it doesn't look like we're overstating it. I wasn't able to go through the expenses here. I didn't have time. But from a tenant demand standpoint, it's pretty strong. It doesn't look like we're overstating the rents. So just went with model on this one. That's my advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gates. You have a question.
Just one, thank you. So regarding the features renovated suites on page 8, you would agree that doesn't mean all suites are renovated, correct?
Yeah, it could be like the last one where they're renovating as people moved out. I don't really have much information on that at all.
Okay, thank you. That would conclude my new questions.
Ms. Nesbitt, do you have any questions?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Ms. Davidson, questions?
Yeah, just a quick one. All of the variables in the model are model driven, like rent, vacancy, expense, cap.
Yes.
And then the selection of your comps, are those also model driven?
No, they aren't. These are just ones I was able to look at in the area. I just basically looked at the age, the suite breakdown, and I did take a glimpse at also what they said they collected 839 were assigned, and then 815 on the effective gross income side. So it doesn't look like we're overstating it. So I didn't really put too much time into looking at comparables, to be honest.
Okay, and I just had one other quick question. On the previous property that we looked at, we heard how the expenses were high. And then on this property, you indicated they're kind of within the norm, pretty good. Yet they're not really that much different than the previous one, being a garden apartment, whereas this is really a 3-story masonry.
Yeah, I mean, it's the expense ratio is it's pumped out by the model. My comments in regards to the expenses being high from the last property, just to clarify, was that was determined by looking at the pictures and the extensive renovations. Typically when units are renovated, one gets a bit of a renovation, repair and maintenance holiday, because everything's new, right? And there's nothing to fix.
Sure.
So that's kind of where those comments are tied together.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all my question.
And I don't have any further questions. Please go ahead, Ms. Kate.
Thank you. So if you turn to page 2, you'll see our requested assessment of $5,938,000, as well as some exterior photos from different angles. So on page 5, we have our property description. So the subject property is located on Hamilton Avenue at its intersection with Redfern Road in the Crestview area of Winnipeg. So the property is a 3-story apartment built in 1974 with an approximate land area of 2 acres. And there are 84 units and 84 parking stalls. So you'll see an aerial photo of the parcel and a Google Map view on the next page. So as an overview of our income approach, you could turn to page 9. So the primary issue is on the cap rate. So we're disputing the cap rate of 5.25, and we're using a cap rate of 5.5 based on our cap rate study. So 5.5 is our base cap rate for a property of this age, and we've not made any adjustments. We feel a mid-range cap rate like 5.5 is reasonable for a property like this. It's from the 70s, no real amenities to speak of. We're assuming the condition is somewhere between average and good, so not made any type of condition adjustment. But with the brokers, again, suggesting somewhere between 5 and 6, and the city's own range, we feel 5.5 does make sense for the property. So if you turn to page 11, we have our income and expense breakdown. So we're using rents of $778,000, or sorry, $778.46. We're again applying a market vacancy rate of 3.2% for the reasons discussed with the prior property. And when accounting for the other forms of income, we have an effective gross income of $798,530. Now, in terms of the miscellaneous income, we will take an average if it does seem to vary quite a bit, just to make sure we're capturing everything. So that's what I've done in this case. In terms of the expenses, our expenses include stabilized repair and maintenance at $1,418 per unit for total expenses of $471,955. We have a net operating income of $326,575, and with the 5.5% cap rate, gives an indicated value of $5,938,000 rounded, which works out to a value of approximately $71,000 per unit. So our appendix starts on page 13, and we've included the city valuation that we referenced, as well as the financial statements. And then for reference, our repair and maintenance breakdown can be found on page 25. And that would conclude my presentation for this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brockes, do you have a question?
Yeah, just a couple ones. Just so on page 11, you'd agree that it looks like this property, in regards to looking at its vacancy, is in extremely high demand.
Yes, the property has low vacancy.
And you boost it to 3% just based on making it higher because you don't think the historical reflects what it actually would go for? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so in terms of the vacancy rate of 3.2%, again, we're applying a market vacancy rate, given that it can't reasonably be expected that a property is going to continue at no vacancy over the long term of the property. And this is not something unique to multifamily properties. A market vacancy rate is applied among all of the asset classes generally. So yeah, I feel confident with the market vacancy rate.
Okay, so just upon just trying to come up with a market value for this, given that you've kind of washed away the competitive advantage it enjoys in regards to the vacancy rate, would that not be reflected in a lower capitalization rate, given its historical tenancy strength and strength of income received?
Well, our cap rate is at 5.5%, and this is already assuming good quality properties in good locations. So it's already kind of assuming that there is demand for the property. I don't see a need to put a downward adjustment on the cap rate in regard to using the market vacancy, especially at a rate of 3.2% is not unreasonable.
Just in regards to those good properties, are they assumed to have below market vacancy or at market vacancy?
I believe they would be assumed to have probably a market vacancy. Yeah, I would assume.
Okay, that's fine. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Elizabeth, do you have any questions?
I do have just a couple questions. I'm on your page 11, and I'm looking at your management fees on line number 15. So it's not much, but I see that over the years, the management fee is relatively stable at around 32, 33. Yet you stabilized at 39, almost $40,000, which is higher than any of your other years. Can you explain why you do that?
Yes, for sure. So in regard to the management fee, it's standard practice from our side as well as from the assessment department to use a rate of 5% as a market rate for the management fee. So in cases where the actual management fee over the 3 years is higher, we would still use the 5%. So yeah, you raise a point that the actual management fees are lower than the 5%. But sometimes what happens is that there could just be certain efficiencies built in. For example, if they have other properties in the area and the same manager can handle all of those. So I can't confirm if that's what's happening here. But there are sometimes those cases where the 5% will be higher just due to kind of different efficiencies worked in.
Okay, and I guess I'm also looking at your R&M budget or line item, number 17. The highest was back in 2018 of 142.8 thousand. It's gone down quite a bit to a low of 86.8, and yet it is stabilized at 119. I see that it's just a mathematical, well, maybe it's not. Is that mathematical? It's not the average. So you've done something different than the average. Can you explain what you did there?
Yeah, so with these R&M items that are listed here on this line item, they're unadjusted. So where we take a closer look at the R&M would be if you go to page 25. So on page 25, we've done a full breakdown and stabilized it, so removing outliers, values that seemed out of place. So that's where that 119.89 would come from for this property.
So did you include 2016 in that?
Yeah, so where available, we'll do R&M from 2016 to 2020, but just in terms of the income and expense breakdown that we have, we don't include the 2016 there, but we would include the 2016 in our stabilized repair maintenance if we have the data, which we do in this case.
Does that increase it more than it should be in comparison to your other calculations? I'm just asking because I can't do the mental math quickly enough in my brain.
Yeah, for sure. So 2016, when I'm looking at the R&M total, it is higher, but that's including around $66,000 in plumbing, which we have excluded from the R&M. So yes, it might make it a bit higher, but the R&M is, our point is just to show over the 5-year, so the longer term, I guess, of the property, what they've spent on it.
So your total expense ratio is 59%. Is that high for this type of property? Low? Like it's higher than the previous one. Could you speak to that point?
It's definitely on the higher end, close to 60%. Not out of bounds with what we've seen for other apartments, but it definitely is on the higher end. And sometimes what happens with these kind of 70s apartments, or not just in the 70s, but some of these more aged, I guess, properties with no amenities and such, where they want to attract tenants, they're going to be, including things like the utilities and the rent. So that will drive up the expenses. So so you'll see like the utilities are included in the in there. So that will make it a higher expense ratio, but not uncommon for properties where they want to keep low vacancy, where they don't really have amenities. So so I would say the expense ratio is on the higher end, but not unreasonable.
Okay, thank you. No additional questions, Madam Chair.
Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions. Thank you.
And I have no questions. Any wish to summarize either one?
I'm okay, thank you.
I'm good also, thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead with number 3, 475 Hamilton, Mr. Baracus.
All right, one moment, please.
Oh.
Okay. File number 22-2216, roll number 07 213426600475 Hamilton Avenue. It's a not-for-profit seniors center in the same neighborhood that we've been talking about. $6,132,000 was the model assessed value. 1977, we don't have any effective year built on it. 91 suites, 31 outdoor parking spots. Just did a kind of quick review on this one. I'm going to make a recommendation on it. So the recommendation is, if you go to page 3, make it easier for everyone to notate that. So I'm going to use the model net operating income of 312,734 I'm gonna use a 5.5 cap rate on it. I think that 5.1 is too low, given that it is a non-for-profit senior center. Even though I haven't inspected it, it's mostly simple finishes amongst other reasons. So the new valuation, my recommended valuation is $5,686,000 rounded. And I think that it dovetails with what we're seeing for the other properties previously discussed. And for reference, take that number, you divide it by the number of suites. That's only 63,178 a suite, so it's pretty low. But still, I think the 5.1 cap is too aggressive by the model, so I made an adjustment.
What
I'll
did you,
just stop there.
sorry, what did you say the new cap was?
5.5.
Thanks.
Ms. Katie.
I think we're still a bit far away on the cap rate.
Fair enough. Okay, so I'll just go through my brief here. So page 1 kind of shows the metrics of the property. Already brought that up. Page 2, no recent sales, good mailer history. It is a not-for-profit, so we don't really consider the actuals because they aren't running it in a manner in which a for-profit purchaser would in order to make money, which is how we're assessing the files today. Page 3, 33 bachelor, 57 one-bedroom. And we have our model income workup. Just glancing ahead, we're not too far apart in regards to net operating income, but the cap rate is where we differ. So I'm not going to spend too much time on these parameters. So our rent comparables, you can see we've got it set low in our system. It's only $6.79 on the rent, but we agree on rent unless something's changed. So I'm not going to really dwell on that. We've got our cap rates here on page 5 and 6. And some aerial photos on page 8. And then page 9, just on the agent opportunity website, just shows some of the features. They're smaller units. Bachelor's only 380, 525 square foot, one bedroom. They only have parking is about 1/3 roughly for the units. And these places are typically basic. So I really feel that 5.1 by the model isn't right. So I boosted it to 5.5. That's my evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gates.
Yes, just a couple questions. So just to clarify, I guess a couple points you made in your presentation. So you would agree that properties built for seniors housing tend to have certain deficiencies built in, such as small units and poor parking, correct?
I mean, some can. Visit my grandmother on the weekend. She actually had a pretty nice one off Main, but that would be more the exception than the rule.
Okay. And would you agree that properties such as the one we're dealing with today would tend to be built to a more utility grade or basic standard than market apartments?
In my experience, typically, yes.
Okay, thank you. That would conclude my questions.
Ms. Nesbitt, do you have questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions either. Thank you.
And I have no questions for Mr. Brokus. Please go ahead, Ms. Cates.
Thank you. So if you turn to page 2, we have our requested assessment of $5,125,000, as well as an exterior photo. If you turn to page 4, we have our property description. So the subject property is located on Hamilton Avenue, near its intersection with Buchanan Boulevard in the Crestview area. The property is a 6-story apartment built in 1977, and the land size is approximately 1.1 acres. There are 92 units, which includes 36 bachelors and 56 one-bedrooms, and there are 44 outdoor parking stalls noted. So you'll see an aerial view as well as a Google Map view on the next page. So if you turn to page 9, we have our cap rate overview. So we're applying a cap rate of 6%. So we were disputing the previous cap rate of 5.1 and also the revised cap rate of 5.5. Our base cap rate for a property of this age would be 5.5%. And we've made a couple of adjustments, one being for seniors housing. Not all seniors housing properties, but certain seniors housing properties, such as this one, have certain deficiencies or hard to cure issues built in, such as inferior suite mix. They are all bachelors and 1 bedrooms. There's no larger units, such as 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms. The units that they have are also quite small. Bachelors are 380 square feet and 1 bedrooms are 525 square feet. And additionally, they tend to have low parking ratios. So in this case, we see 0.48 stalls per unit. We also make an adjustment for social housing. So in this case, based on low income tenancy, there's increased risks with social housing. When there's low income tenancy, it creates higher operating expense ratios. Social housing properties tend to have more deferred maintenance, etc. So those are the 2 adjustments that we've made to our cap rate, to a cap rate of 6%, which we feel is reasonable for this property. So if you turn to page 11, we have our income and expense breakdown. So we're not far off on the NOI. So you'll see it's mainly just the cap rate issue. So that is how we get our indicated value of $5,125,000 rounded, which works out to approximately $56,000 per unit, which is not unreasonable considering that the units are quite small and kind of basic levels of finishes. So my appendix starts on page 13. And what I have is the city value we've looked at and the financial statements. And as well, we have a breakdown of repair and maintenance and reserve expenditures on pages 30 and 31. And that would conclude my presentation on this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baracus, do you have questions?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Nesbitt?
I have no questions, thank you.
Davidson?
I have a quick question. You used a 3.2% vacancy rate, the same as the city. Is that essentially just a market type rate, or is this actually reflective of the actual vacancy experience in this block?
No, it would just be a market vacancy rate for properties like this. They're not going to have market rents and they're not going to have market vacancy. But looking at it from the perspective of an investor where it may not carry on in the same fashion, we apply market rents and market vacancy.
Do you know if there's a high demand for this particular property, given the location?
I would assume there is. Generally, when the rents are quite low, there will be waiting lists for the properties.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all my questions.
Ms. Cates, in your experience, do you find it's unusual for buildings such as this, essentially seniors housing, to have masonry construction rather than wood frame?
Well, this one is a high rise, so I would say it probably makes sense in that case to have masonry or concrete. But if it was low rise, then I think wood frame would probably be more common.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions. Any need for summary?
I'm okay, just a quick break after this file, please.
Sure, that's fine. Everyone's good. We'll take a short recess. 10:15, back at 10:20. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'll call the hearing back to order. We're looking at number 4, 160 Lumsden. Please go ahead, Mr. Baracus, when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. File 22-2542, roll number 0721782800, 160 Lumsden. Assessed value $5,905,000. 1974. We don't have any effective year built on the property or anything like that. 44 suites, 48 outdoor parking spots. Page 2, no recent sales. Page 3, it's a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, 44 in total. And we've got our modeled work up here on page 3. Unless anything's changed, we're pretty close, within $2,000 of each other in net operating income. So I'm not going to dwell too much on this workup or the comparables that are found on the next page. On page 4, we've got a 5.1 cap rate. And you can see comparables. They are a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units. This particular building's got 3 bedrooms, so you can get more rent for that. Page 5 and 6 is the cap rate stuff we've talked about already. Page 8 shows the exterior from the websites. On-site management, parking stall included. It's got a playground and suite laundry. Air conditioning in some units. And there's some storage as well. You can see on page 9, photograph. You see there's 2 buildings. It's in the Westwood area as well. And it's just, pardon me, so we're saying 5.1 as per the model for our valuation of $5,905,000 or $134 a unit. Thank you.
Questions, Ms. Katz? Kate, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I have no questions. Thank you.
Ms. Nesbitt?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Davidson?
Just out of interest, this has got 45% 3 bedrooms. Is this unusual?
For this age group,
Because none of the comps have any 3 bedrooms, yet this is almost half 3 bedrooms.
I don't have any statistics on it, but it's more typical for it to be a mix of 1 and 2s. Then you might have the odd 3 or the odd bachelor. So yes, I would agree that it is not typically the case that there's this many 3 bedroom units.
Okay, that was it. Thank you very much.
I have no questions. Ms. Kate, would you please go ahead?
Thank you. So if you turn to page 2, you'll see our requested assessment of $5,518,000. On page 4, we have our property description. So the subject property is located on Lumsden Avenue between its intersections with Galbraith Crescent and K Crescent in the Crestview area of Winnipeg. The property consists of 2 2.5-story apartments built in 1974 with an approximate land size of 1.5 acres. There are 44 units, including 8 1-bedrooms, 16 2-bedrooms, and 23 bedrooms. And there are 48 outdoor parking stalls. So you'll see the aerial photograph and the Google Map view on the next page. On page 8, we have an overview of our income approach. So we are disputing the cap rate of 5.1 from the assessor, and we are using a cap rate of 5.5% based on our cap rate study. So for a property of this age, we've assigned a base cap rate of 5.5, and we've not made any adjustments. There are some amenities like in-suite laundry, individual entrances, but when we look at the suite sizes, they are on the smaller end for what we would expect, like the 1-bedroom being only 560 square feet. Generally, even with the newer stuff, we see 1-bedrooms at least 700 square feet. So they are on a bit of the smaller end. So we've not made any adjustments here. And we have our cap rate of 5.5, which we feel is reasonable for the property. So if you turn to page 9, we have our income and expense breakdown. So we are using rents of $627,865. We've applied a market level vacancy of 3.2%. And when accounting for the other forms of income, we have an effective gross income of $609,051. 2019 looks like an outlier for the miscellaneous income, so we've just used the most recent year for the miscellaneous income. In regard to the expenses, we have stabilized repair and maintenance at $2,359 per suite for total expenses of $305,566. We have a net operating income of $303,485, and with a 5.5% cap rate, gives us our indicated value of $5,518,000. And that works out to a value of $125,000 a unit approximately. So if you turn to page 11, it's the start of our appendix. So we've included some other exterior shots, as well as the city valuation and the financial statements that we've looked at. And then for reference, we have our repair and maintenance breakdown on page 31. And that would conclude my presentation for this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barakis, do you have questions?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Nesbitt?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Davidson?
I have none either, thank you.
And I have no questions. Any summary required?
No, thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
good also, thank you.
Okay, moving on to number 5, 1790 Portage. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Barakis.
Okay. File number 22 -2774 07021708 500 1790 Portage. 1961, 1981 effective year built on the property. So I am going to make a recommendation on this property. So I was able to just take a real quick look at the applicant's workup ahead of time. So it does look like, in my opinion, now we're based on their analysis. I don't really have a problem at all with what they did. We're understating the expenses. So I'm going to actually use their net operating income of 276 746 on the property. And then I'm going to apply the model cap, which is 5%, to it. And that comes up with a valuation of $5,535,000. Stop there.
Okay, so you're using the applicant's NOI
Mhm.
and the model-driven cap rate of 5.0, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Cates?
I think there's still some room on the cap rate from our perspective, so I think I would like to proceed.
Okay.
Not a problem. So it's 1961, 1981 effective year built. So it's had some work done to it. 46 suites, 37 outdoor parking spots. Page 2. Let's see. 2009 purchased for 3.6 million. They've been good handing in their mailers, so no issue there. 6 bachelor, 22 one bedroom, 18 2 bedroom. So it's a good strata of different unit types. Then we've got the model workup, which I amended based on the applicant's site-specific analysis in this instance. Then we've got our cap rate stuff here on beginning on page 5. So you notice, see, I've been putting weight on is that one at 32 Arden. Again, this is a 69. It's got an effective year built in 1984. This one is a 61. It's got an effective date of 1981. They're both in nice neighborhoods, suburban nature. One's in St. Patel. This one's out west. So I do feel that the cap rate at 5% is justified. Going to page 8, just give you an idea of the level of work they did to justify the effective age. You can see they did $600,000 in 2009. Kitchen renovations, new plumbing, flooring, and paint. Then on the next page, 2020, they did another almost 200,000. Concrete balcony repairs and replacement of guardrails and waterproofing. So the place is in good shape as far as I know. I haven't inspected it, but they've been taking care of it. Page 11 shows the exterior. I mean, it looks in really good condition. To me, balconies look new, pretty nice actually. So then you can scroll through the pictures, you can see that they've renovated throughout. So the five cap is looks good, and we've got an agreement on NOI. So I'm just gonna leave it there for everyone. Thank you.
You have a question?
Yes, thank you. So regarding the effective year built on page 1, are you aware of how it's derived? For example, is it a model element or is it kind of an opinion of someone from the assessment department based on renovations?
Yeah, it would have been an opinion by the assessor who reviewed the file and reviewed the extent of the renovations, and taking into account, of course, the elevated level of rent they're able to receive, trying to line that effective age up. In our model, generating a potential of income and expenses in line with what the income and expenses submitted to us by the owner are. So it's kind of like those two elements in tandem. Is the best answer I can give you.
Okay. And regarding the assigned cap rate of 5%, are you aware if the model differentiates between a property built in 1981 versus a property like this one built in the 60s with an effective age of 1981?
I believe it just takes the effective age into consideration. But I'm not 100% sure, but I'm about 90% sure it's whatever the effective age is, that's where it pulls its data from, not so much the original.
Okay. And then regarding the permit on page 8, so given that the permit's from 2009, would it be fair to say that that's already been captured in prior assessments?
Well, I mean, it would have been captured, yes. That's where the effective age came from. But I mean, it still applies going forward. Like it had an effective age of 1981 in 2012, and that hasn't changed, hasn't been boosted since. So it's been getting older since, relative to the permit and the adjustment to the effective age since it was applied to the property as years go by.
Okay. And then regarding the permit on page 9, would you agree that for a property with balconies, that balcony repairs would be kind of a standard element of repair over the long term of the property?
Yes, hopefully.
Okay, thank you. That would conclude my questions for this property.
Thank you. Ms. Nesbitt, your question.
I do not have questions. Thank you.
Davidson?
I have no questions either, thanks.
And I have no questions. Please go ahead with your
Thank you.
case.
So if you turn to page 2, you'll see our requested assessment of $5,271,000, as well as an exterior photo. On page 4, we have our property description. So the subject property is located on Portage Avenue at its intersection with Cavill Drive in the Bruce Park area. The property is a 6-story built in 1961 with an effective age of 1981, and the land size is approximately 21,000 square feet. There are 46 units, which includes 5 bachelors, 22 one-bedrooms, and 19 two-bedrooms. And there are 46 parking stalls noted, where 37 are outdoor and 9 are covered. So you'll see the aerial photograph. On page 8, we have an overview of our income approach. So we do feel a higher cap rate is warranted for this property. So we are disputing the cap rate of 5%, and we're using a cap rate of 5.25% based on our cap rate study. The property has been renovated. That's captured in the age that's being applied. We're using the effective age as well. Our cap rates assume good quality properties in good locations. So we feel a 5.25% cap rate is more reasonable for the subject property. So if you turn to page 10, we have our income and expense breakdown. So I won't go through it in depth since the assessor has kind of spoken on this already, but you'll see all the inputs that we're using. And that gives us our indicated value of $5,271,000, which works out to approximately $115,000 per unit. So our down can be found on page 28. And
Thank you. Mr. Barakis,
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Nesbitt,
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Davidson,
No questions, thank you.
and I have no questions. Which brings us to the final item on our docket, which is 2170 Portage Avenue. Mr. Barakis, when you're ready.
Okay, not a problem. All right, so file 22-3420, roll number 07050028002170 Portage Avenue. Assessed value 1.487 million. 1955, no effective year built in remodel for it. There's 16 suites and there's 20 outdoor parking spots. Page 2, no recent sales. Page 3, you can see the breakdown. It's 2 bachelor, 12 one bedroom, 2 bedroom for 16 units. Model valuation at a 5.15 cap rate comes into the 1.487 rounded, or only 92,000 a unit. Rent comparables are found on page 4. You can see that it's a good range when you're looking at the properties on Portage and Ness. Actually, disregard comparable number 3. That's a row house. I didn't notice that when I was putting in. See that it's much higher. So comparables 1, 2, and 4 would be applicable. They're a mix of 1, 2, and bachelor units. At 824 falls within the range. Cap rate evidence is found on page 5 and 6. We discussed that, and there's some pictures. Page 8 onwards. So you can see that it's been maintained quite well. Countertops look, they don't look like 55, but I wouldn't say it's been like a heavy level of renos to it at all. Just trying to look at the pictures. It looks like the windows may have been done as well. So they're taking care of the place. I don't have any permits for it. Then we have the mailers that follow on page 11 and 12. They're combined with its sister building next door. Now, a lot of times I'd go for non-compliance, but because you can actually separate them because they have the same amount of units, unit breakdown, we're able to review the numbers on it. So non-compliance isn't something I was going for on this. So just went with a model valuation. We're not too far off on net operating income, so it is predominantly like a cap rate issue on this one. So just went with the model. That's my evidence. Thank you.
Sorry, are you done?
Please done. Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. Ms. please go ahead with your question.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Ms. Nesbitt,
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Davidson, and I have no questions. Please go ahead, Ms. Kate.
Thank you. So if you turn to page 2, you'll see our requested assessment of $1,241,000. On page 4, we have our property description. So the subject property is located on Portage Avenue between its intersections with Moorgate Street and Sharp Boulevard in the Birchwood area. The property is a 2.5-story apartment built in 1955 with an approximate land size of 10,000 square feet. There are 16 units, and there are a total of, the property operates as part of a complex with its sister building where there are a total of 32 units and there's 20 outdoor parking stalls. So you'll see the aerial photograph. So on page 8, we have an overview of our income approach. So we are disputing the cap rate of 5.15%, and we're using a cap rate of 5.75% based on our cap rate study. A 5.75 cap rate would be our base cap rate, and we've not made any adjustments. So if you turn to page 9, we have our income and expense breakdown. So essentially, the statements are combined as mentioned by the assessor. So these values in the subject stabilized column are going to be combined values. And then where I've broken out the NOI, I've highlighted in orange on line item 33B. So just a note there. So in terms of the total rents, it's $350,722. We have used a higher vacancy at 9% to reflect the higher vacancy of the property. It's not unusual for a property with lower suite count to see higher than market vacancy levels. And then when adding in the other forms of income, we have an effective gross income of $335,660. The expenses include stabilized repair and maintenance at $2,156 per suite for total expenses of $192,924. So the combined net operating income based on those above values is $142,000. And I have some interior photos of the property. So on page 12, they're unstaged, and then the remaining photos will be staged, but it just gives a better sense of the finishes of the units. And then we have the city valuation, as well as the financial statements we've looked at, and our repair and maintenance would be found on page 21. And that would conclude my presentation for this property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barakis. Do you have questions?
Yes, just on page 21, if we can go to the repair and maintenance on it. So this is a 1955 building, correct?
Correct.
So when I'm looking at the repairs and maintenance on it, it looks like in 2016, they spent $318,329 on extraordinary repairs. Do you have any information in regards to what those might be in regards to?
I'm not sure what the extraordinary repairs would be in regards to for that. Just in kind of looking at it, I would have to look into it further.
Okay, and then on the same page, in 2017, it looks like they did quite a lot of plumbing. They did $37,000. They did $54,000 worth of counters and carpentry. $34,000 worth of painting. $17,000 worth of flooring replacement. Given the original year built is 1955, and looking at the pictures, do you think that there ought to have been that you would put an effective age on the property?
It's hard to say whether an effective age should be put. That would be something the assessment department does, but as it stands right now, there is no effective age on the property, so we're looking at it as such.
Okay, and then just tying that into your cap rate. I know because we don't always agree on things. Just looking at pictures starting on page 12, It doesn't look like 1955 in there, does it?
No, it doesn't necessarily look like 1955. They do invest money into the suites to keep them well maintained, but there are still a lot of older elements in terms of the appliances, in terms of the overall finishes. Like they are quite basic. So yeah, they do invest money. They do invest money into the suites, though. This owner generally has higher R&M.
And then just going to your page 8, looking at the chart and remembering what those pictures look like, does it look like 1960 something in there where it would deserve a 5.5 cap, where it would fall into that 60 to 1998 cap rate? Is it closer to that, or is it closer to like a 1959, 1946 type look?
I think we would be getting into the realm of speculation at that point to say it should or should not have an effective age. At the end of the day, too, even if the interiors have been updated, the structure of the building is from the 50s. So the structure is going to be aged, like the kind of the foundation, etc. So, I mean, whether it should or shouldn't have an effective age, I'll leave that to the assessment department. But as it stands right now, it's a 1955, so we've valued it as such.
All right, those are my questions.
Ms. Nesbitt,
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Davidson,
I have no questions either. Thank you.
and I have no questions. So that completes our docket today. We've heard every property, and the hearing will be adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.